We're asking you to send in any questions you may have. Never fear as to how simple your questions may be. It is important for us to understand this process and to know how to engage with this new system of government. Remember, it is put there not for the governor or the senator, but for you and I. And therefore, understanding it is very, very critical. This morning, we're speaking with Safia Abdi from the Transition Authority, and also Reverend Jephthah Gathaka joins us now. Asante sana for coming in. Let's just have a recap of what we discussed before. And I think the critical question, and we also have this from one of our viewers on Twitter who just asks, yes, what is devolution? That is a very good question. We throw these words around in this country and perhaps don't have a very clear understanding of them. Perhaps we can have a new visitor joining us on the set this morning to just tell us, in your view, what is devolution before we carry on?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Good morning, viewers. And I want to first apologize for coming late to the traffic jam, which is also a blessing to have many cars. But then you can see that each blessing has got its own challenges.
Hopefully our governor will do something about that, and we'll be talking about the functions of county governments.
Yeah, I think this is the appropriate time. Yeah, when we think about devolution, we are thinking of moving services, moving governance from top to down. Okay. Because you see, in the early times, and even before we got the constitution, what was there, we had a government that is there on the top, which people used to call the central government, and everything was done from there. Everything was descended from there. But now, what it is with the new constitution that has brought in the devolution is let this trickle down. And when we even talk about services, that somebody does not have to move from Marsabit to come to Nairobi to get a birth certificate. Somebody does not have to move from Lunga Lunga so that he or she can get a passport. But you can get it somewhere near. So bringing the services, that is very important. Even making decisions on how those services can be rendered. This is what we see with the devolution. And according to the County Governments Act, it says that devolution should not only be in the county headquarters, it should trickle down up to the village. It should be seen that.
Indeed. It seems to me government is coming to me now, as opposed to me going to government when I need that resources. And that, I think, for me is huge and it's fundamental. Let's talk about the types and, of course, and the functions of the county and the national government, because now we're talking about that they're coming there. And you've also mentioned something important, Reverend, about not just about the services, but about how those services are done. And this is, talking about the county government process. Safia, the county and the national governments, what are their functions as per the Constitution?
Schedule 4 to the Constitution provides list of functions. So for the national government is, I think, about 34 or 35. And for the county government is about 14. And I may not be able to say all, but some of the key functions of the, not key because all are key for the counties, for the county government include agricultural service. The policy will be done at national level, but agricultural services, livestock, and all fisheries will be, the implementation component will be done at the county level. Health services, apart from policy, the other part of the implementation bit will be done by the county government. Of course, another key function is management of resources, because with function, funds follow functions. When the function is devolved, the money will be devolved. So public financial management is also key functions of the county government. And as I said, there are about 14, and Schedule 4 of the Constitution provides all that.
But even before we, and that's important for us to know the functions, but there's also to define the function itself. And apparently there are different types of functions. I think that's also important for us to understand.
Okay, there are actually basically 3 types of functions. One is exclusive functions. These are the functions assigned to either level of government exclusively. And for instance, foreign affairs is an exclusive function of the national government. The second type of function is a concurrent function, and these are functions shared by national and county government. And a case in point is, for instance, disaster management. Disaster management is a function of the national government and a function of the county government. And when I talked earlier about the analysis of the functions, now we have to look to analyze it and agree what can the national government do and what can the county government do. Those are concurrent functions. The other function is residual function, and residual functions are the functions that are not assigned by the Constitution to any level, but the Constitution provides that unassigned functions will be the function of the national government. Okay. So those are the types of functions.
So anything that's not covered under exclusive, under concurrent, will then naturally fall to the national government?
And it's also not listed in Schedule 4.
Okay.
It's now a residual function which will be performed by the national government.
Okay, all right. Important. So the national government has some functions,
yes,
exclusive and separate to it.
Yes.
The county has its own as well. And then, of course, there's those that they do together.
Yes.
And then there's the residual functions. Important to note. Now, we have different counties, and everybody says, okay, it will be good because there'll be competition between Nairobi County and Mombasa County, and to see, you know, who's doing well in terms of collecting revenue, making money, and of course, bettering the lives of the people in those counties. But will the counties be able to share services? Because sometimes it seems like it's Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Kakamega, and you know, they're all separate. Reverend, will they be able to share services?
Yeah, thank you very much. That would take us back now to the Constitution. When you look at Article 6, it says very clearly that these counties, or like the levels of the government and even these counties, they are distinct, but they are interdependent. When we come to the question of interdependent, this is where now we think about the counties. Do they have to depend with one another? There are things that we can depend on one another. For example, Nairobi gets its water from where? From the county of Nyandaro.
Yes.
And even from the county of Murang'a. If the government or the county of Nyandaro would say that they are going to charge Nairobi because of all that waters in the Sasumwa Dam,
yes,
you will find that it is going to be a bit awkward.
Right.
When you think about the road transport, the road that cuts from Mombasa and it goes up to Malaba, it will have to cut across the
counties.
Now, we will share all those things. And don't forget, when Sophia was actually giving examples, and she would have even talked about the sports. When it comes to sports, you see, we will share those things. And when you think about the standia, it's not that every county will have its own stadium.
That's right.
But, there are so many standia everywhere. So there is that wealthy sharing. And even though there is a competition, which is very good, so that each county can make sure that they manage their resources very well, there is that thing of sharing. Remember, it also talks about the consultation. So the counties will have a meeting where the governors can meet, and then they can start sharing experiences and even asking one another, you have been able to do this. Tell me how I can also do it. And in Narok, we can see that you are able to manage tourism very well. Tell me, how is it that in a place like Marsabit, what kind of things do you think I should have so that I can also attract tourists? That kind of sharing, consultation, I think it is there. And the Constitution puts it very clearly that it's not a matter of lone rangers. It's a matter of sharing.
Indeed. And
that's why we are one Kenya.
Indeed. And you know, it's interesting that you even mentioned the idea of water and roads that are cutting through. And the government, the county government can also enter into agreements with the national government. Is that not so, Sophia?
National government can enter into agreement with the county government can enter into agreement with the national government. They can actually also enter into agreement with other counties, and they have joint projects and joint committees. They can also enter into agreement with the public. as the county government provides, for instance, things like citizen commissions. The citizen can organize themselves and enter into partnership with counties, and also private sector. The issue of private partnership
Yes.
is possible.
Yes. Okay. And I think that is so fundamental to say this morning that it's not my county and your county and, you know, let's do things and let's see how far we will go. Because I think if we were to do that, none of us would survive on our own, indeed. But we've talked about sharing of services, you know, like water, for example. And we wouldn't expect one county to sell water to the other, or, you know, electricity, depending on where the grid would be. But institutions, for example, will the counties be able to share institutions as well, Sophia?
There are various, like the independent commissions are shared institutions. The CIC, the CRA, the Controller of Budget Office, the Auditor General's Office, and those are shared. And Parliament also. The National Assembly and the Senate are all shared institutions. So it's shared by both national government and the county government. But I
think amongst them also is the Salaries Commission,
the
because
salary,
it talks about public service workers who exist in every county. So it's important to understand that all of these are sort of collectively owned and participatory by all the counties?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And they serve both level of government. And let's not forget the KRA also. Although the function may belong to the national, but they are also working for the counties. The Human Rights Commission, the Gender and Equality Commissions, the Anti-Corruption Commissions. I think almost all, not almost, actually all the independent offices.
The defense forces as well. Because when they go out to defend the country,
depending on
one county or another. Okay, all right. So amongst all of those and key learning lessons that we're having this morning, so continue to send any questions that you may have. Like you see, we're breaking it down as simply as we possibly can. So the criteria now for the transfer of the functions, and I think from the Transition Authority, you can best explain this particular process. So we've talked about the transition period and you know what that is happening, but also now those functions, and you said it'll take time to transfer those. What is the criteria? Which ones are done first, and you know, how does that work?
Okay, the Constitution and the Transition to Devolved Government Act provides for phased and asymmetrical transfer of functions. Phased in a manner that it will not be, you know, once at a go, and asymmetrical means it can be given to County A and not County B based on the capacity. But the Constitution also provides that the sixth schedule, Article 15, provides that you cannot deny a county a function simply because they don't have the capacity. So we must build the capacity so that they can get their functions.
Right.
And you cannot give a county a function that they can't also perform. So
that's an interesting one.
Yeah. So we must ensure that either, I think that one means that either way, we must build the capacities of the counties to assume their functions.
And this is in terms of not only infrastructure, but also human
capacity.
Right.
And I will maybe mention a few of the criteria.
Okay.
The first one is there must be an existing law at the county level for the performance of that function. So without a law, as the law stands now, you cannot transfer functions. Secondly, you must have a service delivery system from the county to the lowest unit. So if the service delivery system is not there for certain function, you cannot transfer. And I would like to say that some of these structures are already there. Maybe what is needed is to enhance it and give it more capacity. The counties must also do things like capacity assessment, so that we can see how their capacity can be built, and we can monitor the progress of capacity building, so that we cannot say that, oh, you don't have the capacity. So the Transition Authority will embark on, for instance, capacity assessment of all the counties and involving the counties themselves, so that it is not seen as the Transition Authority exercise. So that is a part of it. There may be some there should be infrastructures in place, like if it's health service at, for instance, sub-county level, we must have the infrastructure to deliver that service. And the infrastructure could be the hospitals, the equipment, and also the systems should be there. The other thing is the counties must show public finance management system is in place. So if the public finance management system is not in place, you cannot transfer the functions. And the counties also are not supposed to be given a function if they don't have plan. I think the Constitution and the County Government Act provides that plan is the basis for budgeting and expenditure. So I think we've learned our lessons from the past, where projects can just be directed to where an influential person wants it to be. So they must have a plan for it so that the function can be transferred.
Right. So plan, function, funds. And funds follow function.
Yes.
Okay. What happens in the event that as the transition authority, you say, and based on a lot of what you've said, if a plan is not there, then you will not necessarily transfer that function. What happens when you don't approve the transfer of that function? I suppose the question is then who carries out the function?
Okay. I think the criteria is quite objective and it applies across the board. So when we say that we are not, we will not advise on this, recommend the transfer of function, we must have good reasons for saying that. But the county government can appeal to the Senate, and if Senate with the majority vote approves the transfer of the functions, the Senate decision binds on transition authority. Yeah.
And indeed, the Senate, like we keep saying, is the big brother of the counties, you know, sitting at the national level and looking out for the interests
of the counties,
of the county and the governor. So we have now a transfer of function from one level of government to another. Possible? Yes, no, when does that happen?
As I said, the criteria is, we have already gazetted the initial functions which we did 30 days before election. And that is gone, and for those functions we know that we meet most of the criteria because the law is there, the infrastructure is there. For instance, the functions which have been performed by local authorities, everything is there.
Right?
Yeah, they exist and all that. So those are the functions which we have transferred. The rest of the functions, they start applying for it from July 1st, and we had already informed them. They are already doing their budgets, they are already doing their integrated plans. So the process of transfer has already begun. Yeah. So once they request and they satisfy the objective criteria, nothing stops them from getting the functions.
Right. And I think this is an important and yet simple question that we're coming to next that I think many of us still grapple with and tackle. What are the powers of county governments? I know we've talked about the different types of functions, you know, what it is the national government can do, what it is the county government can do. But Reverend, what are the powers of county governments?
Yeah, well, we think about the powers of the county government. When we are talking about passing the laws or legislative powers, in every county there is what is called a county assembly. Therefore, the ward representatives that were elected, they are the members of the county assembly. And their functions, actually the main function is to pass laws or to legislate for the county. So that is one arm that you can see. Through the county assembly, then there is the legislative powers. Then when you come to the executive powers, here is the governor and his executive committee, or his cabinet, if you wanted to say so.
Right.
So all the power, all the executive powers, that is running the county, is in the hands of the governor and his executive committee. And when we look at the Constitution, what it says, depending with the number of members of the county assembly that you have, if they are not more than 30, you can have as much as 10. Or actually the maximum is 10 members of the executive committee. Others can have 9. Or those members, each is assigned what we would call, if we are looking at the national government, a ministry. So you will see there is a member of the executive committee of the county in charge for gender, social services, and sports.
Right.
So that is a member of the executive committee.
Okay.
Then when we come to those who are working, we have a public service inequality commission for the county. These are the people who are supposed to establish and even de-establish or even fire.
The functions, I think, that were constantly there, animal husbandry and that sort of thing, continue to happen under that. We have some questions that are coming in, and somebody is talking about the challenges that are facing devolution, but I'd like to put it in a more positive way, this way, Safia. What needs to happen for devolution to take place? The process of that transition from what we had before the new constitution, what we had actually before the election. What needs to happen such that we midwife this process successfully until the end of the 3-year transition period that you're talking about? All things being equal, what is it that you need so that we as citizens can also help to be the watchdog and say, you know, let's make sure, and we can speak to members of the National Assembly, some of those shared institutions that we talked about, to make sure that the process of devolution is done as it should and completely?
I think the process of devolution is unstoppable because first we have the constitution, and the constitution dedicated a whole chapter on devolution. Secondly, we've had election. Actually, that is the beginning of devolution. We've had elections and we have the county government in place. We have transferred certain functions that they can perform. Or we have, I say we have recommended or we have identified that these functions that may be transferred to them. And there are also some inherent functions that the county government will perform. Like as he said, they are the legislative arm, they have the executive functions, they have the administrative functions of hiring, managing their finance and all that. So the process has started, and the rest will come now as we embark on long-term capacity building. Actually, for both national level, national government and the county government, we have to continuously build the capacities of both levels of government so that they can acquire or they can assume their functions. And we monitor. And on the other side, I think the public shouldn't just sit and watch. They must hold the governments accountable. Because I think there is a common adage which goes that I think the price of liberty is continued vigilance, or I may not get the right words, but we have to be vigilant and hold our leaders accountable.
Right, okay. And that is something, this is a question that continues to come up. And Safia, I think you'd sort of alluded to this. A lot of the functions that the county government, you know, is taking up, as it were already in place. We had county councils, we had municipal councils, we have the Nairobi City Council, for example. And there just seems to be this concern about, you know, the fate of civil servants in the counties. Should they be worried? This is a question from Lois Njoroge, who's watching.
The constitution actually protects the public servants. The County Government Act also provides that no public servants can be disadvantaged. It actually says they can only be advantaged. You cannot disadvantage them. And there are provisions, the transition provisions, section 138 going down provides how the public servants would be treated. For instance, Transition Authority has embarked on auditing the staff. So we have purchased an asset management system to put the assets and liabilities and also human resource information. So once we are through, we'll table the information, and the counties can and the counties can now see the skills they have, and you know, they cannot just start hiring the staff.
Right.
And the employees can also actually appeal to the Public Service Commission. So if they feel that the county government are mistreating them.
Right.
So I think I am sure many people, we've heard on news that, oh, I don't want this staff, we want them to go.
Right.
But when you are transferring a function, you transfer the function plus the people.
Right.
Because there are people already performing those functions.
That's
so you cannot just wake up and fire them and
but
hire
the
new
function
people.
remains.
Yeah,
right?
and the function remains.
Okay.
So you cannot just transfer the function minus the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And indeed, just to quote, we had Professor Wanyande, who's from the CIC, on matters of devolution, and he put it really simply, that if you were performing what is now known as a county function, then you will belong in the county government.
Yes.
If you were working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like you said, which is now a function of the national government, then you will continue to work for the national government. But the functions existed, the persons doing the functions existed, and therefore, like you say, you cannot take the function and remove the people. Okay, so that's very important, I think, for everybody's peace of mind, because they're saying new people are coming in.
Actually, the County Government Act provides that the people working in the counties are deemed seconded to the counties. It says that.
Okay.
And the secondment ends when the person is fully transferred to either level of government.
Okay.
So when your function is transferred and you are fully transferred to the county government, you cease to be the employee of the national government.
Okay.
You become the employee of the county government.
All right.
Yeah.
Yvonne, there is this question which you asked, how to make the devolved government to actually succeed. And Sophia talked about the citizens' role.
Right.
And I think we should remember that according to the objectives of devolution, one, as it is in 174C, is actually to enhance the people to be able to participate in their self-governance and also to decide on the kind of development they would want.
Okay.
Now, here is where she is talking about the participation. And when you look at the County Government Act, it provides a very big area where the citizens should participate. If there are meetings that have been called by the county government to discuss about development, it is the wananchi who should make sure that they go and decide and say, this is the kind of development that we want at this place.
Right.
They should not just stay there in their homes. The same act talks about a depository center in the county center, where people should be taking their ideas. So if we do not participate by giving our ideas, then it is not going to succeed, and we will find that our county lags behind. But it is not the assembly, it is not the executive or the officers who have let it down. It is us as the citizens, because we have refused to participate. Therefore, it is very important. It also provides for civic education. And this civic education is something that is continuous. What is our role as citizens in ensuring that both the national and the county government, they function? Here is where we think about not only civic education, but civic duty.
Right. And I think civic duty does come after civic education. And I think the most important step that you talk about, Reverend, in terms of us being able to be participatory of the process, is if we understand the process. And I think that is why we have forums such as this one, to discuss the issue of devolution, to have people ask the questions and understand the process, so that they're able to engage. Because if you don't know the functions, then you cannot question when you think the function is not being done. And I think that's very important for us to understand. And Reverend, you touched on something so important. You know, when some of these meetings are called, they say, you know, let so-and-so go, let Sophia go, it's okay, she'll come and, you know, do the rest for us. But I think it is important for us to be participatory in the process. Here's a very interesting question. You know, we've been talking about what the county government can and cannot do in managing its own resources. Can the county government, for example, they've come up with some sort of project, maybe a water project or something that they feel will benefit the members of the county. Can they then borrow money from financial institutions? Can the governor of the county of Kakamega go to an institution like the World Bank, like the IMF? And that is a question from Anthony Bishops, who's watching. Sophia?
Okay, the Constitution provides that the county government cannot borrow without approval of the national government. So they can borrow, but they must seek approval from the national government to borrow. Okay. I think the Constitution is quite clear on that.
Okay, all right. So if they have a project, is this presented to the national government and say, this is the project we have in mind, this is the plan, like you talked about, a plan and see if they can get the funds, like you were talking about, from the national government.
Yes.
And then say, okay, these are the funds we've been able to get, this is the shortfall we are thinking of going. Okay, it would be a little awkward to have one county dealing with an international lending organization like the World Bank without the knowledge of the national government.
Yeah, as I said, they cannot do that. They must pass through the national government.
Okay.
If there is no guarantee, they cannot, yeah.
And the national government would be the one to guarantee that
Let
loan.
them, yes.
And remember, Yvonne, that there is a Senate. And the Senate, its work is actually to look at the welfare
Yes.
of the counties.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is the Senate that is actually going to recommend to the national government, yes, you can guarantee this loan. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And that, it's very important for us to understand there's the role of the Senate.
Yeah.
So they must at least go through the Senate first, and then all of that is done. We talked about this before, but we can just recap this again. The benefits of the system of devolution to the ordinary Mwananchi, to myself. I think Sophia had talked about this earlier, but Reverend, you can just touch on this again. You know, why go into a devolved system of government? How does this benefit me, the ordinary Mwananchi?
As I said in the beginning, first is the services. The services that were very far away from us have now been brought near to us. And that is a very big benefit. And we have saved quite a lot. Then when you think about it, decision making, the decisions that would have waited until somebody in Nairobi has said this. Now, first that decision, it is us as the Wananchi of that place that we are going to sit and say, yeah, this is how we would want it. And whoever is going to decide that, the county assembly is just there. So a decision is made there. Then there is this self-governance. There is also a matter of thinking about the marginalized. And remember, the far away that the marginalized are from the central government or the national government, they are going to be forgotten.
Yes.
But now one of the objects is so that these who have been marginalized, not just thinking about women, not just thinking about the youth, but think of the few people in a certain place, the air model of a certain place. And each county actually has got its own air model. People who have actually been marginalized. Now you will see that because services have come nearer to us, now those marginalized will no longer be marginalized again. They will be remembered. So when we think of these three things, we find that there is quite a lot of benefits. And not only that, when you think of when it comes to matters of trade, and actually, if I give an example, I've been saying, if it is my own county, Kirinyaga, where they grow rice, I would like the government there to ensure that everything that can come out from rice is actually done in Kirinyaga. Including if you can make busal from the rice, let it be made there
in the county to provide jobs and that sort of thing for everybody that's there.
Things.
Okay.
So there is quite a lot of benefits.
Okay, indeed, that's very important. Thank you both very much for your time this morning, discussing the issue of devolution, the benefits of it, the types and functions of the county government and the national government, and how, of course, the two work together. And I think it's very important also that we emphasize the fact that counties do share the national institutions that we have. They do share services, and it's all about collaboration. There's nothing that stops Nairobi County and Kirinyaga County from sitting down and signing an agreement and saying the rice that you grow there, let's, you know, import it, you know, so to speak, but that we're not all separate, balkanized entities, but part of one. And I think, like you talked about, there's civic education and there's also civic duty. Safia Abdi from the Transitional Authority and Reverend Jafta Gathaka, thank you very much both for joining us and discussing the matter of devolution that we have been doing this morning. So Our discussion ends for now, but it doesn't have to end with you. This is how you can get more information on any question. I keep saying, do not worry about how silly the question may sound. You'd rather sound silly, ask the question and know. I think there's a saying regarding that in Swahili. I'll get it for you in just a moment. It's at the back of my head. But any questions that you may have on this issue, the website is www.knice.go.ke, and if you want a very quick question answered for you on Twitter, you can tweet them your questions. That's at KNice Kenya. You can also go to Facebook. The page is KNice Kenya. We will be doing this again next week in a bit for you to understand this new systems of government. Remember, education is not just around an election. This is what we are calling civic education, for your chance to be able to interact with your new systems of government so much better. So visit the websites and you can continue tweeting your questions as well.